Hello, everyone. How are we doing?
Hey, it's Parker Kligerman. Thanks for watching on Twitch.
Done. End show. Close it down. That's as good as it's
I'm
gonna
out.
get.
See you guys later. Thanks for the cameo.
Yeah, we
I
sent
knew it
Parker a
was
lot of
coming and it still got me.
I wasn't exactly sure when to go, but then you started to speak, so I was like, okay. I didn't get a countdown or anything. I just went.
Yeah, we like to do it live.
Our viewers don't get a countdown either. You just scare them each week. So
Perfect. That's like every time I watch YouTube, Motorsports NBC. It scares me. Don't worry.
I love when we played highlights on here. And so you would show up in the highlights, and then you would show up at the end of the show, and it would just be like, "This is really just Parker's show. We're just living in it. We're just like maintaining it for you to come back." So
Appreciate it. I also appreciate the royalties handsomely. So the mailbox money has been great, and I I'll allow you to keep going with those.
you guys are getting.
I see why you're choosing to switch lanes to the broadcasting thing full time. If you're getting those YouTube royalties, man, how do you turn that down?
I know that just sounds great. Sounds awesome to me. I don't know if that's the case, Jesse. You know this deal. Who knows what's ahead? But I would like to keep broadcasting, and I'd like to keep jump scaring people on YouTube. So if that's an opportunity, I'm looking forward to it. But I don't know yet. I gotta do a couple more races here. Stay focused on those. But yeah, we'll see if it's what's on the horizon. I don't know 100% yet, but we'll find out together. Hopefully.
How did you say that you were interested? Did you tell someone whose job it is to hire you in next year? Like, how do we advocate for you? Can like chat go and be like at NBC, NASCAR, please bring back Parker. Like, is there anything we can do to help with the power of the internet?
That would be wonderful. I appreciate it. I think the powers that be know my intentions and my desires. So we'll see. As it's not dissimilar to racing in that when you're dealing with yourself as the product, it sort of has to have all the moving parts come together, and everyone has to be in agreement and that sort of thing. So we'll see. But I assure you, in some fashion or form, I'll be talking about race cars somewhere, doing in some way, because I love race cars, just like you guys. Ash, I know how much you love it, and I see so much of your content out there of all different forms of racing. And I just think, and you as well, Jesse, and I think that's something I want to do forever. So even though my full-time driving is coming to an end, being a part of motorsports, being a part of racing, and just talking about race cars to me is the greatest thing in the world. So I want to do this for as long as I live, in some fashion or form. So I feel confident I'll make that happen, but I don't know when and where and how yet, but we'll see.
Ash, to your point about making it known what he wants to do, this is like what his seventh NASCAR show this week or something. I think he's doing his fair share of campaigning on wanting to be out here talking about race cars. Parker, we
Yep.
love having you. I'm just giving you a hard time. No, but talking about the actual decision to step away from full time racing, we only found out about that a few weeks ago. When did you decide to make that decision?
A fair amount ahead of everyone else. You all were second to know. So no, you're maybe third or fourth, but it was definitely a personal decision that I kind of went through all the different factors personally and internally, of course, and it just came to this fork in the road of sort of deciding what my future held and sort of where I wanted to go in driving versus not, and versus other opportunities in the world that I wanted to go pursue. And I felt very content and I felt very at peace in my driving. And I don't know, I don't think it was something that sort of like I was building towards in any way. It just very quickly became a feeling that was overwhelming for me. And I was like, hey, I think that's a moment you have to sort of listen to that and take the leap. And it's incredibly scary because all I've ever known for the last, since I started go-karting 22 years ago was my intention to be a full-time professional race car driver. Like that's all I wanted to do in life. It's all I've ever wanted to do. The only other thing I've gotten to do that was a gift was talk about race cars and do TV shows like Proving Grounds, where I got to drive tons of different road cars. And to me, like that was the only other thing that was even ever on my mind. So I've really gotten to do both my dreams. And I'm still, I believe, pretty young, 34 years old. So it just kind of came to a point where if I was cool with not pursuing driving full time and that not being my main focus, I just got this thought of like, what else what would I do? I don't know. And I tell people though, like even with just 3 weeks left, I haven't turned it off yet. So I don't know. Like for 22 years, all I've ever had was on in my brain was figure out how to be racing full time and go win races and fight for a championship. And now in 3 weeks, I'll turn that off, and I have no idea what that opens up. But it felt right. I'm at peace with it, and maybe I'll more time to chat with you guys on Twitch, whatever. But it's it hasn't been easy. It's not. It's definitely been scary, and I think it's definitely like a self exploratory time for me to kind of figure out what is next, and what that version of me is post driving, and I don't know yet.
You mentioned when you were talking to Shannon, I believe it was this week, that you had a lot of legends of the sport reach out to you, when you announced your retirement and such. Did they give you any words of advice or wisdom? Because you've known this for 22 years, the getting the sponsors, racing on the weekend, looking at your telemetry, studying stuff, and now you have to do that mindset shift. Did anyone give you words of wisdom or how to make that transition?
You know, um, Not particularly, because I don't think it's the same for
Mhm.
everyone, right?
Yeah.
And obviously nice words of like, "Hey, you've done, great job," and that sort of stuff, which was very flattering and really warms the heart. But I think, when I talked to other drivers that had gone through this moment, the one consistent thing I could take for them was that when you know, you know. And that's how it felt for me. Like it just when I knew. And then this past week, a lot of the legends that reached out were about what happened at Charlotte, being so close to that win, and thinking for 30 seconds I had won an Xfinity Series race for the first time finally in 15 years, and had moved us into the next round of the playoffs, and just in a must-win position, one of the most intense races of my entire life, which was so awesome. I did feel a little bit feel like there was a bit of poetic justice. Final year, make it to the next round, like get that first win, all those things
all those
lining
things
up.
lining up.
Um,
Um,
but I think the from that there was a lot of legends that reached out that was really flattering, and very kind about my performance and the way I handled myself and that sort of thing. So that was cool. They had great words of advice on how to handle it going forward, and I don't know, it's so cool in some respects. Maybe there's a better word out there, I don't know, but that like this sport that I saw on TV when I was 9 years old had became a career, became uh something that I got to do for a long period of time, and then get the opportunity to be sort of validated by some of the legends in the sport, and to converse with them and know they were paying attention and be flattered to the fact that they knew I exist, right? Um, that's so cool to me. And I know the 9-year-old kid who saw this and wanted to make it happen would have been proud in those moments. And it's definitely surreal. Like when Jeff Gordon walks up to you and wants to talk about your race the next day, I'm like, I have to remind myself it's Jeff Gordon talking to me, not to be a name dropper, but I'm just saying, that's pretty cool. So yeah, it's surreal in a lot of respects, but overall it's been very heartwarming and flattering to have, to know I have a bit of respect from some of the legends of the sport.
I mean, I just think that's such a great example of this sport as a whole. And to your point about these guys that you watched growing up now taking the time to reach out to you, it just I think further pushes that narrative of how they are the only ones that truly understand how much of yourself you put into this job. Not even just on the weekends, but every day of your life. And then, like you said a minute ago, so much of your identity even is just being a race car driver, and there are very few people that can fully understand that, and it's those veterans that you mentioned that truly get that. But to that point about kind of being defined by this role that you've had for so many years and chased for so many years, you mentioned to Shannon following that devastating second place finish that at the end of the day it's not going to define your career, it's not going to define what you did. So what are those defining things when you reflect back if it's not the statistics that you're able to be proud of?
It's a great question. When I was 16, I was asked, what did I want out of racing? And I remember saying it would be so cool just to get paid to do this. Definitely accomplished that for many, many years. And I think, that gives you an idea of like how low the bar was at one point. From there, I went on to win races and fight for championships and drive for some most historic teams in all of motorsports with Team Penske, and was there for 4 years. And I call that my college education in a lot of respects. Um, and I think the thing that I go back to is like, you know, at the end of the day, do you have people's respect? Did you do enough in this sport to garner their respect? And I felt like this past 2 weeks, I felt that for sure, which is amazing. And I think at the end of the day, as long as for the fans, as long as I brought some form of enjoyment and hopefully maybe furthered their understanding of the sport, or gave them someone to root for, or that sort of thing, that means the world to me. So, that the results are results, but we can't really control the results. And I know it sounds crazy, but results in racing are kind of a misnomer. I always go to performance, right? Because results, you could go lead 99% of the laps at a race, blow right front tire, and finish 31st. The result's going to say you had a terrible day. The performance was amazing, right? That's the thing about our sport that's maybe different from other sports. So that's why I felt like, results don't define you as a person or as your tenure in the sport, but it's how you conduct yourself. It's if you had people's respect and if you performed. And I felt like, post Charlotte, I was like, man, that was the best performance I ever had in my life. Like the best 10 laps, hands down, I've ever driven my entire life, because I don't think there's any time I've been under that amount of pressure, been in a position that was a must win. Like, you only will uniquely be a part of that if you make the playoffs in NASCAR and find yourself in a position where it's the final cutoff race and you have to win to advance. Like, that is such a unique thing to NASCAR that very few drivers in the world have experienced that feeling. Then to be in the lead, holding off faster cars, dominant cars, some of the best road course stock car racers in the world, in AJ Allmendinger and SVG, Sam Mayer. Like, that to me was just one of those moments where I had to rise up and find more than I ever had before, and I did. And so, like, that performance to me means the world. Whether there was, whether we got the result or not, it's the performance that I lean on, because that's what I can control, right? At the end of the day, like, as any athlete, we have to focus on the performance, because results are a bit out of your hands at times, but your performance is wholly in your hands. And if you can rise up and perform, that's the best feeling in the world. And I felt like I've done that. And I've done that the last 2 years here at Big Machine Racing, from coming in there as a young, very young race team, building up the processes and all the things behind the scenes we had to do to make it into a championship level race team that could make the playoffs, which we did last year. We did this year. We got in the owners points playoffs this year. We've done everything but win a race. Our average finish, I think, is some of the best in the top 5 in the series this year. We've led the series at super speedways and road courses. Like, we've done a lot, and we've done a lot of great stuff. And I think that goes back to performing, and I've done that, and our team has, and I've helped in a lot of ways. I hope, take this team the best place it's ever been. And that's something very gratifying for me.
You bring up a really good point about your performance on track and the results. I mean, motorsports is a team sport. You mentioned you've developed all these relationships with the teams that you've been in, that you've, I mean, helped build, been a part of, and them having, the great pit stops, being quick, the strategy calls, that all comes from the team aspect of motorsports, which a lot of people do highlight the drivers because they're who they see on TV, but a lot of it comes from working together and having that feeling and knowing that you guys can trust each other on the track come race day.
Yeah, it is. And it is definitely a team sport, because I can tell you, I've won with the team and I've lost with teams. And I've been the reason we've lost. There's been pit crews that have been the reason we've lost. There's been, mechanical mistakes that have been the reason we've lost. I think any racer that does this long enough will find that there's many ways to lose a race. Maybe as many as ways as there is to win a race, I think, in some respects. But it is a team sport, because it takes so many moving parts to do this. Like, at the end of the day, race cars just alone are thousands of parts, right? That are either going to work or fail or whatever. And then there's the humans that have to put them together, and the humans that have to operate them, the humans that have to pit them, the humans that have to drive them, the humans that have to make strategy decisions throughout a race. So it's an incredibly dynamic sport that's just full of so many moving parts that, you know, you you have to rely on the relationships you have with those humans, because it's you guys that make the difference between winning or losing. And yes, the parts and pieces matter, and they're incredibly crucial, but the humans are the ones that make those parts and pieces come together the way they should and operate them correctly. So it's definitely a team sport through and through. Us drivers may get all the fanfare and a lot of the notoriety, but it's the teams behind the scenes that make just as big a difference, if not more sometimes. So, I feel very honored to have worked with a lot of great people and, people I've learned a lot from. And that's another part that's been so cool to me is the people I've met, the people I've gotten to work with, the people I've gotten to be successful with. There's few things as gratifying as, working with a team, whatever you're doing, right? Maybe it's putting a Twitch show together or building a business or racing that when you are successful together, that's such a cool feeling because it's why we're here on this planet. Have fun and hopefully enrich people's lives, and to do that with people you enjoy is a really cool feeling.
Well, and on the topic of team, not to harp too much on the retirement because you have said that you still
It,
have a couple races left.
oh no, oh
Still
no.
still very much fighting for that win. I'm not pushing you out here by any means, Parker, but I do want to ask. I mean, you mentioned it here now, and I've heard you mention it numerous times on other interviews. How much of an opportunity this was that Big Machine gave you, and how much you respect and really just appreciate everything that that team was able to give you in these last couple of seasons. Was there a conversation that you had to have in regards to that retirement? Maybe with was it Scott Borchetta, or was there somebody else in that realm that you had to sit down with and tell them that news? What was that conversation like?
Yeah, Scott and I discussed it for sure. He was really gracious, and Scott's been amazing. I can remember when they were in 2022, sort of going through different drivers. I was sort of knocking down the door of Big Machine Racing, being like, "Hey, give me a chance. Hey, give me a chance. Hey, it's Parker. Give me a chance. I'm
Hey,
the guy on
remember me?
YouTube.
Remember me?
Hey,
Yeah.
remember me? Thanks for watching Twitch." But um, I finally got that opportunity after winning Mid Ohio, which was super cool, and it felt so classic NASCAR to get a call after winning a race, like straight out of the video games, where it was like, "Hey, you want a race? Here's the call you want to get. Would you like to come race Talladega?" And it was like, "Yes, absolutely." And on that at Talladega, I met Scott for the first time. We were walking out to the car, and he just turned to me and said, "Hey, would you want to do this full time if it was a possibility?" And I was like, yes. I don't know if I really thought through all the ramifications of it at the time, but I was like, yeah, sure, why not? And, didn't know where that would go. And then eventually we obviously put the deal together, which was so cool. And Scott's such an amazing person, and he's accomplished so much in his life that it's been really cool to get to know him. And, I think both of us agree we'll be friends for life. And I hope to do things with Big Machine for years to come. Because they have such an awesome platform. He's built such a just great platform in general across Big Machine with the vodka company and the record label and all the bars and restaurants they have and that sort of thing. And so I, you know, having that discussion was definitely tough, but he was very gracious about it and really cool. And I think at the end of the day, what I was asked to do when I came here at the end of 2022 was to help this team become a championship caliber race team. And we've done that right now. I think part of my goal was to win a race at least or win many races. We've been out about as damn close as you can be without getting it done, about 1 foot from Charlotte. But I feel like I've lived up to my end of what I was asked to come here and do. And he absolutely has on his end, and the whole race team has. And so, I think it's been a really, really cool time in my life that I look back at really fondly. And, he said similar things to me about this time being one of his favorite times of this race team. And I think, that's really cool. And I am very flattered by that. But I do believe, as we get to the end of this year, this race team is in the best position it's ever been, and nothing would make me happier than to see them go and be even more successful. And for Nick Sanchez to take it to the next level, the next step, would be super cool. So I feel like I've lived up to my end of the bargain. That's all you can do, I think, in these things. And I've had a lot of fun doing it, and that's been the cool part. Like when I got back full time, I just promised myself that I would always remember how damn cool it is to be a professional race car driver. I've felt that the last 2 years for sure. And I've absolutely loved every second. And I love this game. I love the idea of racing at a high level and just doing this in a really tense situation. And in terms of just knowing that you have to perform, you're at the pointy end of this field, you're up against great teams. great drivers, and when you're successful, it's really rewarding. And so I do love it. I still love it. I've loved this entire time, but as I said, it just it felt right to take the next step and see what else is see what's next for me in the world.
Real quick, because I know Ash has questions and I know the chat has questions, so
Oh,
this
I
can be
see the
short and
chat.
sweet,
I
Parker.
see that they're
Yeah, they've
blowing up.
got some good ones, but I would be remiss if I didn't ask, because I did find it really funny when you were talking to Shannon on NASCAR Daily, and you gave us the beautiful spiel about how this second place finish isn't going to define you, and it's not about wins, it's not about, wonderful answer. And then Shannon says, so what are your goals for these last couple of weeks? And you said, get a win. Which, like, I love, right? Like, I mean, what else are you going to say? Like, that's what you're out there to do. So of course there's a balance, right? You're happy with what you've accomplished, but at the end of the day, like, do you think you can go out there and get a win in these last couple of weeks? What are you willing to do to go out like that?
Well, I think, this past weekend at Vegas, we finished 5th. We had one of the fastest cars. We corded a right front tire to the first stage, which hurt our track position, and we had to make big adjustments at the pit stop. So we went all the way to the back. We drove all the way back to the front. And then it became a little bit of a track position battle that we just couldn't quite overcome. And the way it played out at the end didn't quite give us the opportunity. But I think we had the speed to compete with the 16 car. And that's, back to performance. Like, we performed on that day. We just didn't have the right brakes come our way. You know, I looked at we get a lot of like reports after races, and I saw that we were the 3rd fastest car in that final stage, and we had to drive through a lot of traffic and pass a lot of cars. So to be that close to the leader speed wise was like, oh man, we were really fast. So I think that was an opportunity to win. I think this weekend is one I've had circled all year. I had it circled last year. We were really competitive. Homestead, Miami is one of by far my favorite racetracks in NASCAR. I think it's one of the best there is. It's one of the best stock car tracks there is. So I'd have to say that this weekend is one that I definitely feel like is a massive opportunity, considering how well we ran at Vegas. Looking at Martinsville and Phoenix, Martinsville is probably one of my worst tracks. So wouldn't it be so poetic if I were to go get the win there? That would make a lot of sense. And then Phoenix, you have the championship for it. That makes it tough. But not saying it's not an opportunity, but it definitely is. But yeah, probably the poetic thing will be that we win Martinsville, which would be hilarious.
Really cherry on top, to be honest with you.
Yeah, there you go.
Some questions from chat that Jesse alluded to, and I know you've kind of talked about it. Just because you mentioned the retirement and the announcement doesn't mean you're potentially never going to get in a car again. Is there any interest in sports car racing? We have a question from the YouTube chat.
So I have a call after this about sports car racing, particularly one large one in Florida in January that I'd love to be a part of. So I
Oh, the
feel,
40th Port Orange, my favorite.
yeah, that one. Yeah. It's the autocross event down there in the parking lot, Daytona. No,
Oh, I'm familiar.
I think I'm the closest I've ever been to making that happen. That's a major bucket list item for me, to go sports car racing and to do major endurance events. And so I think this will happen, which would be amazing. That would be super cool. I would love, depending on how my schedule sorts out for next year, try and drop in a couple races here and there, in trucks or Xfinity, whatever it is. I think that'd be fun. I don't think more than a handful is probably realistic, but that'd be enough to scratch the itch, right? And to still stay relevant and that sort of thing, and just for me personally to strap in a race car and go fast, which is nice. It's almost like therapeutic in some respects. So I definitely think I'll still drive.
Who I mentioned adding at NBC to tell them more and that we support you, but who can we do for the sports car thing? Semi-serious, semi-joking, that if you need the power of the Twitch and YouTube chats, we will go and do what we need to do.
That is very nice, you guys. I do appreciate it. Thank you, chat. It means a lot. I feel like this deal is so close. I don't know if we need any help, but we'll
perfect.
definitely take your support once it's done. So I'd love to have everyone's support down there and love to see everyone that comes to the race. And hopefully at the end, find myself wearing a new watch, which would be tremendous. I will definitely get my racing suits from that point onward cut a little bit shorter on the left side, if we're able to do that. So that would be wonderful, just to sort of like show off a little bit a watch. That'd be
Like
nice.
a subtle flex, yeah, just a little
like
bit of one.
just a little
Yeah.
flex. Yeah. Hey,
Look,
I
Have some
won this.
H.
I'd be lying though when you talk about who we need to talk to about his next career choices. You mentioned still wanting to be in with Big Machine. I was kind of hoping you were about to tell us that you were debuting some kind of a music career, and I didn't know who I needed to get with to make sure that that continued forward. But I guess that's not in the tables. Sports car racing is really cool too, and the chat seems to be really excited about that. So
Definitely not music. I cannot sing. That is, we at the whole production team on NASCAR and NBC loves to go to karaoke bars each weekend, and I do find myself often at the karaoke bars. But I am the best front of the stage groupie and sing along person, not the one holding the mic. Anytime I hold the mic, it's probably best you run for your life. So,
Parker,
not no
everybody can
music on the
sing.
future.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah,
how well you can do it. You know what I mean?
that I don't know if
Please.
it's singing then. If it's shouting, maybe.
Just sing tequila, and then you'll be fine. It's just one
That's
word.
true. It does you have enough spike coolers, you might have some sort of liquid courage to get up there. I do see what's the song. I'll just be honest, it's Mr. Brightside by the Killers. That is the
Classic.
go-to for NASCAR MC. It's one of my favorite songs of all time. I've always said it would be my if we had intro songs in
Well, you
Xfinity
gotta
Series, that
shout
would be
it.
mine. You do have to shout that. That's why I'm good. As long as there's
Like
someone
that.
actually doing the vocals. Yeah.
And not just you. From NASCAR fan 24, who was Parker's favorite NASCAR driver and F1 driver growing up?
So my favorite F1 driver, I had two. It was Kimi Räikkönen and Michael Schumacher. I had Michael Schumacher when I was a little younger when I first found F1, and then Kimi came on the scene a couple years later in 2002, 2003, and I remember thinking like, "Oh, he's young. He's like me." Like you when you're 12 years old, you assume anyone young is like you. And so Kimi Räikkönen was definitely one of my favorites. And then really around that same time, Jimmy Johnson came into NASCAR, and for whatever reason, I remember gravitating to him and just thinking his car was cool. I liked the Lowe's scheme, and so for me, definitely was a fan favorite. His didn't know he was going to go on to become the greatest of all time and win all the championships he did, but I definitely was a huge Jimmy Johnson fan when I was younger.
Before he was cool, you can proudly say.
Yeah, well, it's like I saw him before he blew up, right? So
Right. You can be a little hipster about it.
Hey, what'd you think then when Kimmy showed some interest in the NASCAR world? Were you like, okay?
Oh yeah.
Were you like trying to
Yeah.
play it cool?
Well, so that's actually a really funny story because he came and did the Truck Series races in 2011. I want to say it was 2011, and I was racing for BKR in my first full-time truck season, and we had to do rookie meetings back then every week. He was in the rookie meeting at Charlotte, and I remember thinking like, "Oh, I'm gonna go meet him and all this stuff." And then we sat down. I sat right across from him, and it was one of those moments where, and I regret this looking back, but I remember really quickly in my head, I was like, "Don't meet your heroes. Like, don't meet your heroes." And so I didn't introduce myself, didn't meet him. Then, we were in the race, and I had a tire go down, so I'm coming back through the field, and I remember going down the backstretch, and I was 3 wide, and I looked to the inside, and it's Kimi Räikkönen beside me, and I was like, "Damn, that's cool." Then I passed him. So, that was really cool. It was really awesome to at least race against him. I ended up driving in 2013 when I drove at KBM. The road course car we raced was actually the car he drove for KBM later that year. So
That's awesome.
I have also driven the same chassis as Kimi Räikkönen. I can just say another flex. Sorry, a lot of name dropping in here, a lot of flexing. I don't know what's happening. Maybe it's the Twitch thing. I don't know. I feel I don't know why I'm bragging so much. Everyone's in the chat like,
No,
"Is this
please
guy gonna
do.
stop, please?"
No, we got to bring somebody in that brings a little bit of a cool factor, please. Ash and I just,
Ah,
we need some help, so we appreciate it, Parker. Name drop all you can. But can you imagine if you had told young Parker that you're not only going to be racing against Kimmy one day, you're going to be driving quite literally the same truck that he drove? That's really cool. What a cool
that
accomplishment.
that was wild. Yeah, I and like when I look back, I'm like, man, you idiot! Like, why didn't you just go meet him? Like, say hi. Because since then, I've met so many of my heroes across the sport and outside the sport, and it's always a great time, and it's always cool to meet people and just say you did meet them, and have even if it's a small chat. Um, so I regret that one. Maybe one day we'll find ourselves in the same place, and I can actually introduce myself. I actually did interview him at Watkins Glen 2 years ago when he raced the Project 91 car. After practice, I interviewed him, and that was pretty cool. So I was even closer that time, not to be creepy.
Kimmy's gonna be like, this Parker guy, I'm not really sure about him." Just
Yeah, he's like, this guy, I'm getting weird energy here. Can he get out of here, please? Definite fanboy.
during the, Coca-Cola iRacing finale in the Hall of Fame a couple weeks ago, Dale Jr. was there, and people were just coming up to him, and I'm like, "No, I'm not gonna bother this man." But now I just, like, when am I ever gonna chance to be in the same room? Like, I should've just done it and not thought that I was being cool or, like, saving him a couple seconds from, like, a quick fan interaction because he, like, talked to everybody, took photos, like, he was not bothered at all, but to me, I was like, "Oh, I don't wanna bother him." Like, he's doing something, like, he's busy, but I should've just done it.
I think the saying is wrong. Definitely meet your heroes. So
Yeah.
I agree with that. He's awesome. He's very cool. He's one that, I became closer with on the TV side over the last couple of years. And it never ceases to amaze me when I look at my phone and Dale Jr. is texting me. And I'm like, oh wow. Like younger me would fall over right now. So
But
that is
Parker,
cool.
talk about that respect factor that you talked about earlier. Like, it's so amazing for you to be able to have this time to, it's sad to look at the end of your career, but I do have to believe that part of that is forcing you in a way to kind of reflect on everything you've accomplished. And that's another take right there on the resume. Like, not only on the track, but off the racetrack as well. You've garnered so much respect from people as a broadcaster, and you really, really have to be proud of yourself for that.
Appreciate it. The broadcasting thing definitely has been a gift, and I like to use that term because I don't think I, purposely went after it in any respect. It definitely happened by chance. And I will say there was years that I was not as enthusiastic about it that as I am now. And a lot of that was, the tough part of being on pit road and seeing guys you've beaten or raced against for the last couple of years suddenly get big opportunities or have a big moment, and you're standing there and you're like, but I want to be doing that. And
That's
so
fair.
it was,
Yeah.
yeah, it was tough. But I've definitely, always done my best to sort of put my personal, part of that aside and just look at it as a chance to hopefully educate some of the viewers, to entertain the viewers, to, help people understand what's happening in the sport more closely. And I always go back to TV was the way I found racing. And so whenever I was looking at doing something in TV or, looking at a way to report something or what I would want to describe or talk about, I'd always just say, like, what does 9-year-old Parker want to hear? And it's always guided me pretty well. And so, it is nice that people have been very respectful about my broadcasting and very complimentary. And so that has been really cool. And I now definitely, though, enjoy it even more so than I did, say, 5-6 years ago, because I see just the reaction from people, and I see that there is things that I can find hope that others haven't. And, that's a really cool thing to do. And I always told people with the driving and the race in the TV side, like if I could take one thing from the driving that someone else wouldn't be able to point out because they didn't drive that weekend, then, the viewers won, NBC won, and I won. Right. And so that's something I've always tried to stay true to which is to just find those little things that my unique point of view in the sport allows me to bring to the viewers that maybe others wouldn't.
You are a great example of someone I use when folks are always constantly claiming on social media that drivers, quote unquote, supposedly have no personality. We need more
Mm.
heels in the sport. And I'm like, no, like Parker's, uh, you give great post race interviews, regardless of what happens on the track. You're very respectful, classy to your competitors. You're great at your sponsorships. Constantly, I mean, the way you just like naturally weave them into your content, the way like you just advocate for them, what you do for them, what you do with fans, explaining things, explaining the differences between other race series. I mean, you do such a great job. In addition to your broadcasting, your racing, just being a race fan and then giving fans an insight to what it's like. I was like, yeah, you don't need to be a heel. You don't need to be yelling at anyone. You don't need to be starting fights if you don't want to. Parker's a completely normal, fun, great dude who's like just doing that and like building a social media platform from that.
Appreciate it. Yeah, if fighting is in your lexicon, though, I'd say go after it because it gets a lot of clicks. So have fun, be our guest. But it's definitely not
Agreed.
mine. Yeah, it's not my way, and I think that's I always tell people, and I've had this conversation with a couple drivers recently who have come to me to be like, hey, how can I be better on social media and that sort of thing? And I'm like, you just have to be you. Like you have to be authentic to what is you, and that is, especially in this day and age, the most powerful thing you can do on social media. And I think in anyone who has a platform as an athlete or whatever it is that you're into, the idea of being authentic is, I know it's kind of cringy and someone's like, oh no, buzzwords, are you kidding? But no, really, it's about being authentic because that's the only thing that works. And everyone can see through all the other stuff and all the BS out there. And so that's what I've tried to stay true to. And people always ask, like, hey, do you have hobbies or whatever? And I'm like, if it's not on my social media, then no, because that's everything about me. So that's me through and through. And maybe a bit more drinking. No, I'm just kidding. But
A little bit of
the
karaoke.
yeah, a little bit of karaoke. The thing is, like, that's the only thing, you have to go down that path. And so I feel, I said that to Scott at one point. I was like, hey, it's really cool having an owner that supports me and being me. And, that's not always the case, but I think the sport is changing in that respect. And it has been over the last 10 years, and it's continuing to evolve and allowing drivers and crew members and everyone to really, display their personality. And I think it's a big win for everyone involved.
I'll be in Miami, so if you want to fight, we can put it on our other Instagrams and TikToks and stuff like that. If we need to make
I have been doing
ones.
boxing as a workout. That I have been doing.
Okay, now you have a leg up.
So
Now I definitely don't want to
yeah,
fight. Okay.
my boxing
All right,
trainer
I'm
for the last
putting
2
money on
years.
Parker.
Yeah, well, he's been saying for 2 years,
Sorry,
he's like,
Ash.
when am I going to see this fight? Like, when are you going to fight someone, all this stuff? And I'm like, man, I don't think I'll be a good fighter. Like, definitely not a fighter. I've been in one fight in my life. It was in high school with my best friend over shotgun in a car. It's one of the stupidest things ever. And I remember being like, all right, no, we're not allowed to hit each other's faces. And the first thing he did was hit me in the face, and the fight was over. So
Oh no. Parker will not be doing hockey anytime soon.
no, definitely not hockey. No thanks.
And we want to be mindful of your time, so thank you so much for hanging out with us. We do have one last question. In the spirit of the Halloween holiday coming up, what kind of candy does the Kligerman household hand out? Are you a full-size bar guy? Like, what are we talking about here?
Well, my girlfriend Shannon buys it all, and she got me hooked on those 100 grands. They're like, I think they're kind of old fashioned. These chocolate bars with caramel in them, so those are definitely sitting. She loves Halloween, so like they're sitting in this like holder. Those and like Kit Kat bars, and then Reese's buttercups and that sort of stuff. So if you were to trick or treat from our house, it would be a lot of that. If I had to pick, it would be like Nerds and sour gummies
Okay.
and that sort of stuff. I'm a big sour sugar person. So been really big on those smart sweets because I feel healthier eating them, especially when I'm flying. Because I'm definitely bad about like buying all those candies to go on a flight and then feeling really bad about it. So I've been liking those a lot too. So maybe I hand those out.
Please don't. As someone who
No?
wants to come, if I was going to come trick or treat at your house, I'm going to be honest with you, Parker. I love you dearly and all, but I'm on your girlfriend's side. I want some Reese's cups. If you hand me a dang bag of Smart Sweets, I'm going to say thank you, but no thank you. It's Halloween, sir.
They're really
Just give it
good.
back.
Okay, that's fine. You know what? Teach their own. We'll have both.
I'm just giving you
There
a
you go.
hard time.
We'll see. You know what? We'll display both and see which one's taken more, and that will be a good competition to find out.
I'm
Parker,
just
thank you so
giving
much
you
for
a hard
hanging
time. Although the Smart Sweets, aren't they like extra chewy? When I'm like
Are they?
picking them out of my teeth, I'm always like, this is healthy, no?
Possibly.
I've never had them.
No.
I'd have to think. I don't know. They are good though, and there's something about the idea that they've sold me on. Like, this is healthier, but I'm like, it's still probably got to be a ton of sugar. But for some reason, I think it's healthier. I don't know.
Well, we'll find out when we come trick or treating at your house on Halloween. So
See you
till
then.
then, thank you,
Perfect.
Parker.
Thank you guys for having me. Appreciate it. This has been Parker
Appreciate it.
Kligerman. Thanks for watching on Twitch.
Thanks, Parker. Oh, always a treat to have.
He's great. I know I joked and mentioned he's been on 1,000,001 NASCAR shows, but that's because he is so good at what he does, and the transparency that he brings is so appreciated. And that being said, you can catch him on Inside the Playoffs this week as well. So if you want to hear a little more from Parker, especially regarding what he said looking ahead at these last couple of races and their potential to win, definitely hear what he has to say on Inside the Playoffs, because he'll give you a little more insight on the on track stuff when it comes to that. But always a
You know,
good time with him. I love Parker. He's great.
he was on Inside the Playoffs last week, so it's nice for him to just come back in and kind of just like reiterate from that conversation and reflect on the week that he had in Vegas. And as you mentioned, going into the next couple rounds, just what that's going to be like for him. I will not be fighting Parker Kligerman. Do not worry, everyone. I am not that silly. Yeah, I take calculated risk, but I'm good at math, so I will not.
Oh.
I will not be doing that. That would be fun for everyone watching. And Parker, again, thank you so much for your time. I always appreciate it. And we have a new sign off now, so we should just keep adding sign offs every time he comes on. We'll have the original one, we'll have this new one, and then like every time he comes on, he'll just keep recording another one. From the weekend, Jess,
It'll be a
welcome.
90-second rollout of just Parker.
Talk to us about your weekend.
Yeah, my weekend was pretty good. We had the rescheduled modified race on Sunday afternoon up at North Wilkesboro. It was so beautiful. And, North Wilkesboro was obviously very busy this weekend with the Cars Tour Championship and then the Smart Modifieds. They had their championship race, and then we brought in the Wheel and Modified Tour. So it was a very, very busy weekend up there at that racetrack. But it was such an amazing weekend of racing. On my end with the mods, Justin Bonsignor, back-to-back wins. He took the hold of the points lead coming out of that race, so he is officially the championship favorite, I should say, going into Martinsville. But here's the thing: I mean, I think usually at this point in the points battle, when you're heading into Martinsville, it's I don't want to say it's obvious who the champion is, but you're usually able to kind of start to feel confident about whoever that points leader is. I don't know at this point, y'all. We still have Ron Silk, who is only 10 points back from Justin Bonsignor, and then Patrick Emmerling, who they still have 20 plus points of ground to make up for this championship. But the thing is, like, we have not seen a championship battle like this in the modifieds in years. To have all three of these drivers still very much in contention is so exciting. So coming out of Wilkesboro, I was very jazzed and looking forward to the championship race in Martinsville, following that MX5 race. I should mention that Ash is very much teaching me everything I can learn about those race cars before I watch them take the track this weekend. So thank you for that.
Yeah, if you're near Martinsville, I suggest you go because obviously you mentioned the modifieds and now the MX5s, which I love MX5s. I just like a good spec series, right? We have arguments as race fans where they're in Formula One. Is it the car? Is it the driver? Is it the setup? Blah blah blah. The MX5, right? Your video that you made for the series, just sealed engines. It's a spec series. There's only so much you can really do on the car, and everyone's just kind of jockeying for, I would want to say, attention. Usually you have younger folks, especially like in Toyota GR Cup as well. MX5, you have younger drivers who are making a name for themselves. They want to get rides at maybe GT4s, GT3s, or move on over. And they're just trying to show what they can do. And they can race cleanly and they can make those passes and they can execute well. So I'm excited to see what happens in Martinsville.
How was your weekend, Ash? Did you get into anything fun?
Did I get into anything fun? I watched NASCAR and I watched F1 because it was in Austin, Texas. So that was always, I know. So interesting enough, I had this discussion with someone yesterday that if you're an ice hockey fan, you had Frozen Frenzy, which all the NHL teams play in like 15-minute increment. Like they're all playing the same day. I think it started at 6:00, and then there's a match that starts every like 15 minutes, I think it is. So everyone's super excited. They're like, wow, I love hockey. We're watching all these teams. Meanwhile, as a race car fan, I'm like, man, all we do is schedule on top of each other, and we only race usually 2 days a week. Majority of the races are that. And I can't stand when that happens because I want to watch for passes. I want to see who's climbing. I want to see lap times. Sometimes there'll be multiple cars racing like more than the 2-on-2 teams happening. You have X number of people on the field. You got 30 plus, you got multiple classes racing, and I want to see what's going on. And then I can't pay attention to one really well. And then I'm flipping over between commercials. So it's funny to hear about how stick and ball sport fans are like, wow, I love things on the I love all these teams competing. I have all my monitors up, but then I'm here trying to watch all the race series in the afternoon, especially when like IMSA was still running at the same time and World Endurance Championship, and then you have so much of everything that happens at the same exact time. And I'm like, oh.
It's like you want that NFL fan zone effect of, racing, but is that even possible in racing? Because to your point, there's not just one team playing the other. There's so many things going on the racetrack at once that arguably you really couldn't even cater to whatever race fan wants to see. But it's funny, you're right. It's like you want that, but also that still wouldn't even scratch that itch.
Yeah, an NFL red zone for motorsports would be fun, but also difficult if you're trying to focus on specifically a series or very specific details of who's doing well and what happens and getting information about incidents and stuff. So I'm always interested to see if that would be possible, but at the same time, I think motorsports doesn't lend itself to a red zone era format.
I agree. Possible, but probably not super effective for what we would hope that it could be, in the way that it is, at least for the NFL. There's just too much going on the racetrack. To your point, Ash, can we schedule these better so I can just sit on my couch and watch racing back to back to back to back and not have to flip back and forth?
Yeah, it's just just constantly through the commercial breaks, be like, just hoping for I just want to see what's going on in the other series. We do have cool Dale Jr. news. Speaking about Dale Jr. And all the merch that came out yesterday will drive the historic number 8 Chevy with the iconic Bud King of Beers paint scheme once again. Limited series of the late model stock car races in 2024 and 2025. Mentioned Florence coming up. So that was big news yesterday that people are pretty excited about. Man made
Huge news.
several $1 million in merch sales alone. There's for sure. I don't even know that number.
Holy moly, I had not seen that number yet.
Oh no, I don't know
I
about
mean,
the
I
number.
knew I was at least like $500,000 of that myself, but yeah.
Right, he had this. So I think there were signed replica helmets. They're signed die cast by Dale Jr. in this number 8. Like everyone knows this. I texted my parents because I was very curious about this. I texted them about something else, but I texted them in addition to that something else about this, and they're like, "That's the only way I know their Earnhardt name is this Bud like paint scheme." This is exciting because these are my Polish immigrant parents who don't watch NASCAR. They only know Formula One. So for them to know about this, and be like, yeah, that's how I associate Dale Jr. Like, this makes sense.
I love that. No, that's amazing because I mean that's exactly what I was going to say. Like the thing is for a race fan, we're hearing all these race fans that are loving this because of the nostalgia factor that it's bringing up and the appreciation for this paint scheme, everything coming together with Dale Jr. back on the racetrack. This is the first time in 17 years that we have seen this car take the track in this capacity. So the nostalgia it brings forward, but I think also on the flip side of that, when we're at a time where NASCAR is working really hard to bring in new fans and catch the attention of so many people that are familiar with NASCAR but really aren't super interested, doing things like this, everybody knows at least who Dale Jr. is, right? I mean, that name is something. Maybe if you don't know that, you recognize that Bud scheme. We're doing something here in hitting the nostalgia of the older race fans, but also the curiosity and kind of that attention grabbing to bring new people into the sport. I love when we do things like this, and of course, I mean, Junior's the best at something like this. So I'm very excited. It's all here's the best way to put it. You know, it's big news when you can go on your social media and you're flipping through like Instagram stories and things, and you start to see people that really aren't even in the racing world or aren't big race fans, but they're resharing these posts about news like this, and they're starting to come from publications that aren't just strictly NASCAR, and you're like, oh, this is broken out of the NASCAR world, and this is news like that, and it's very exciting. I'm loving this, and I will be buying more merch myself. Yes.
I thought this would be sold out by now, but I wonder if there's like an unlimited number. Like they're just going to order. I don't know how this works. I clearly don't know. But they have, right? You can buy an autographed Dale Earnhardt Jr. full size, like replica helmet. You can buy an autographed Dale Earnhardt Jr. number 8 Budweiser, like right. You can buy autographed things. You can have the t-shirts, the classic jacket, the hats. I'm just like, this is a lot of stuff, and I'm tempted to. Okay, here's my issue. Jess, let me lay it out for you. So I'm gonna say the next thing. I'm gonna get booze in the chat. You guys just don't have good taste in baseball teams. I bought a Juan Soto baseball jersey for them to go to the when they made it to the World Series. Midnight time that I was thinking about it and the game ended. So Juan Soto baseball jersey. I then purchased when the New York Liberty won the WNBA championships, like their championship merch. And then Dale Jr. comes out with this stuff. I was like, guys, we really got to stop. One, people got to stop winning or doing cool stuff because I can't afford it. It's getting expensive here.
It's a good problem to have, Ash. I don't have any money. I'm buying too many of my team's championship merchandises. Please. I'm so sorry. Wait, hold on. Let me show some sympathy. Oh, I'm so sorry.
Sorry, your team's
I'm just giving you a hard time. When I thought you were starting that argument by saying I spent all my money on Yankees merch, I was really gonna give you a hard time. But I get where you're going here with the championships thing. But I'm the bad friend that says, it'll come back to you, right? Buy the 8 merch. What's another sweatshirt?
Yeah, if you do not listen to this show for financial lawyer, any kind of advice around any kind of just nothing. Financial advice, I agree with Jess here. I'm terrible. Never ask me as a friend. So I'll be like, you just like work an extra shift somewhere. Like you just get an extra job somewhere.
You do need it.
You do need the signed autographed King of Beers Bud replica helmet from Dale Earnhardt Jr. I mean,
Obviously.
So, okay, maybe I'll do that. Maybe not the helmet though, because I do have the Chicago one. Maybe I'll do the car. Now, why not both? It's just why we're talking about this.
You know what? Why not? Oh, here's the thing. You could just not buy the signed one, and then next time you see Junior in person, you'll have that extra strength mustered up to be like, not only can I come talk to you, but can you save me a couple $100 and not have me buy this online?
That's funny. Be like, please. Also, news from this weekend, Williams Wallace to the JGR number 18 full-time Xfinity for 2025. Number 18 Starkey Sound Gear Toyota GR Supra for the full-time NASCAR Xfinity Series in 2025. Just want to make sure I get all the sponsors in there because that's the NASCAR way. Won the 2023 and 2024 ARCA Menards Series East Championships for Joe Gibbs Racing. So this will be his Xfinity Series debut actually this weekend as well. Rookie class is stacked.
Yeah, and it's funny actually. I'm pulling this up to make sure that I don't have my dates mixed up here. We haven't. Yeah, it was literally right after we got off last week that Taylor Gray announced that he would be moving to JGR in 2025 as well. So talking about another ARCA champion, another huge name coming out of ARCA. Taylor Gray didn't win the championship. I apologize. He lost to Sammy Smith. But my point being, another ARCA standout that's moving up. Joe Gibbs Racing building this program. They're stacking that team up. The two of them are going to be competitive next year.
Right, Zillage, Zawalage, Gray, Eki, Sanchez, Dye, Capital. I mean, some people might be a little angry that I mentioned Dye in the stacked thing, but he's an outlier. But realistically, 6 of the 7 could easily win Rookie of the Year. Like, right, for all we know, right now. So I'm excited to watch Xfinity next year. First, someone mentioned, that's a good point. Someone mentioned Minnesotan. Since Brent Sherman in 2016. So if you're someone who bases their fandom off region, or you're from Minnesota, you got a good old Minnesotan boy to root for. I don't know how many people. I'm surprised someone actually mentioned that. I don't know how many people actually root Minnesota. I don't know how many people root for Joey Logano from like Connecticut. I don't know. That's like a huge thing that we do in motorsports.
We do need some more Minnesotanian. See, I'm a Southerner, so bear with me, y'all. We need a little more Minnesotan accent in the garage. I will say that because we got plenty of y'alls. We get a little bit of the Wisconsin deal from the like Derek Krauses and all of them, and that one always every time you hear that, it's like, whoa, you're not from here. So I agree. I like bringing in a little bit more of that northern flair.
Should we get to the 2 races? I feel like people have thoughts about the Cup Series. We have to go through Xfinity first, okay, everyone. AJ Allmendinger held off Ryan Sieg by a mere 0.156 seconds to claim his 18th career win, leading the race 102 out of about 201 laps. I love when AJ Allmendinger wins. It makes me feel like I won because he has so much energy in his post-race interviews when he gets out of the car.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And it was Matt Collick's birthday, I believe. At least maybe it wasn't that day, but it was that weekend. So add to the festivities and celebrations. Employee of the month right there, AJ Allmendinger. Um, Honestly, don't think he was a lot of people's picks for this weekend at Vegas. I don't think he was his own pick for this weekend at Vegas. That was a bit of a surprising one when it comes to just statistically tracks that he's been good at and Colleague has been good at. But good for them. I mean, I think it just further shows how talented AJ Allmendinger is as a driver. And this extended amount of time that he's been back in the car and continued to work on his career and shape himself. I mean, we used to look at him as like road course guy, you know? I no longer, of course, he's super, an easy pick on road courses, but I no longer just look at him as a road course guy. I mean, he's very much showing how diverse he can be with his talents. So I don't know. I think you got to give him some credit, right? I don't want to start this by saying nobody thought he could win this, but I do think that there is something to say for that. So I'm excited to see what he continues to do.
I'm trying to find. So I don't know if Chet knows this, but I do write post-its of like things you guys say. Not that we have any. Again, not that me and Jess have much power, but we like write them down, keep them for notes in a previous, like in our post production meetings and stuff like that. There was a user in the Twitch chat when we like this year first started for our Twitch stream said Ryan Sieg is going to win a race. Um, I just feel every time he's so close. This is not the first time he's gotten second place at a race, right? But feel kind of good for him. You never know when it's going to be your last chance to go for a win. And he's been insanely close, luckily, multiple times this year. But it's just like I get it. I always say Creed needs a win because he's also so close. But I want C to also get a win. Um, so a lot of people saying Ryan Sieg, yeah, got wrong because of that yellow flag because of Sammy Smith pulling over, having those voltage issues. But insanely close. He raced amazingly well. He raced AJ amazingly well.
Yeah, I agree with you. He's definitely another one of those names that I think a lot of people root for him and are able to look at what he's when it comes going back to your comparing, the Sheldon Creeds, the Ryan Sieg, and the rooting for the bride, always the bridesmaid, never the bride. I think you can't underestimate how impressive it is with what Ryan Sieg is doing in the equipment that he has as well. That's not to say that he's in the worst equipment in the field by any means, but to your point about, comparing apples and oranges here, for Ryan Sieg to come out and be as competitive as he is, as consistently as he is, and be as close as he is to getting that win, really is just such a testament to his talents. And I'm with you. It's like hard not to be a fan of him when you go out there and see him come so close. I have to believe it's coming. I mean, but then again, I'm having deja vu to saying that about Sheldon Creed about 2 years ago, and I don't even mean that with shade, but like, right? I don't. Racing, it is so hard to win in the sport, man. Like, it is so hard to win that you got to give credit where credit's due for just being there in contention.
De Weberus in the YouTube chat. Sieg is almost 400 races without a win. Is that correct? I actually don't know that number. That's yeah. He's come
Let's
close.
check on that. I'll let you know because I do know. Was it Sheldon Creed made his 100th Xfinity start this past weekend, or it was within the last 2 weeks? I saw that it was Sheldon's 100th Xfinity start, and I just or 100th. Don't quote me. I have to pull it up. Hang on.
Mark
and I just remember thinking
64, I think. Yeah, if you round up, I get round up 40. We could say 400, but 364, correct. He also says it drives me insane when people refer to him as road course ringer. He has 6 oval wins as well. I think when he's one of the few contending, for sure. So Sheldon Creed will eventually win an Xfinity race, even if it's just one. Yeah, I think it goes back and forth. Yeah, I just feel Ryan Sieg has come so close. But there are 3 post-race penalties after the fact, all for lug nuts not properly installed, and each of the crew chiefs fined $5,000. Number 10, Daniel Dye. Number 27 of Chip Burton, and number 38 of Matt De Benedetto. So sorry for the crew chiefs who got fined $5,000. All right, Cup Series, which I'm sure some folks have thoughts, and I am going to be quick to counter them. First comes first, the conversation, and I'm going to weave this in, and we've talked a little bit before the show started. Ryan Blaney Between being hit from practice and on race day when he talked to Kelly Crandall, she asked if Blaney was concerned about any lingering issues, and Blaney just said, "We'll find out. I'll be in Miami next week, though. I'll tell you that." I've seen some folks talk about concussion testing, and I know Bob has said that after an accident, they typically get the same concussion test devised by the Mayo Clinic, typically used for the NFL, and they do a base test at the start of the year.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, when it comes to concussion protocol in NASCAR, NASCAR is on it. I mean, NASCAR has an entire protocol set in place as a league of their own, to ensure that their athletes stay safe. Anytime there's an incident, there's there there's probably, to be honest with you, times where the drivers are like, "This feels like a lot," but NASCAR's like, "I would rather be." I should preface this by saying I was fortunate enough to work with a group on a piece with the AMR safety crew about 2 years ago when we did it at Daytona and at Charlotte. And it was really, really neat to get kind of a behind the scenes look at a lot of the safety protocols and safety measures that they put in place at the track. Also, to just hear from people whose job is quite literally to be cool, calm, and collected when hell breaks loose, was quite an interesting, position to really follow along with. But so I preface that, by saying this is where I'm getting this information from. But NASCAR really does do so much to ensure that their athletes are safe, even if it looks like an incident wasn't as bad as we may think it may be. They're still going to go through absolutely everything they need to go through to check in on their drivers. The second half of that is understanding that these guys work during the week with so many different trainers, so many different medical, health, nutritionists, so many different types of people that work with these athletes in every facet, in every capacity, that even if it's cognitive training during the week, like that, people are aware of how they're performing and they're very much aware of where their health levels are, on a week to week basis. I think it's difficult at this point in the sport to try to hide something, especially like a head injury. So all of that to say, I am in full confidence that we would never, as a sport, NASCAR trainers, anybody, team owners, would send somebody out there on the racetrack that isn't in full ability, cognitive ability, physical ability to be able to handle the race car in that race. Um, Ryan Blaney said we'll chat with him next week, so we'll see how he feels. But I don't think that he would have. I know for a fact that he would not have been able to get in a race car if he had not been fully evaluated and told that he was able to do that in the position that he was in.
Yeah, Blaney's pretty serious about his I mean, mental and physical health. Sorry, just grabbing a headphone charger. Thank you. And so I think he'd be the first one on it. Obviously, if people are talking about, I think a big example and why this came up, and one of the many chants I'm part of for NASCAR is the Miami Dolphins quarterback Tua coming back saying that like he's I forgot what number concussion he's on, and then the discussion not essentially being around him. That's something different. At what point does the league step in? Do the Miami Dolphins step in? They're like, okay, we're gonna have to work through this. Luckily, NASCAR, I mean, they listen to the drivers. I remember in the Charlotte Roval when the Xfinity drivers race after were like, hey, these curbs too much, lower them. Like can't handle this immediately, same day or next day. NASCAR's like, no problem, absolutely. So a lot of changes happening because of data they get from mouthpieces or from driver feedback to make sure and try to, make sure those situations don't happen where we have to have these serious conversations. And you mentioned trainers just week in and week out. So I know Ryan Blaney would be the first person to take care of himself. So and NASCAR would be right on top of that, having previous data from previous years.
And to your point there, Ash, too, about the comparing the Tua and the question of when does the NFL step in, I think that's where you do have to notice the differences in a league like the NFL versus a league like NASCAR, where Tua's decision to go out there and to continue playing, and then also make the decisions to not wear certain safety protocols or whatever it is, he is making these decisions for himself on the basis of his own health. NASCAR, if you put somebody in that race car that is not cognitively at 100% or is not cognitively at a place to be able to go out there and do their job, you're putting the other rest of the field, the other 35 drivers at risk as well. So as a league, NASCAR has more grounds to step in those places. These drivers don't get to say, I don't want to wear the Hans device. You're wearing the Hans device. Like you,
Right.
there are so many different safety precautions that NASCAR as a league comes in and ensures that, look, you have self-autonomy to a point because we have to take care of the rest of these drivers as well. So I do, for lack of a better word, enjoy the conversation coming up because I think that it gives an opportunity for us to shine a light on safety protocol in NASCAR when there's so many questions looking at a league like the NFL and in the decisions that somebody like Tua is making right now. But I think it's worth having these conversations and noting what NASCAR is doing differently than other leagues to ensure their athletes' safety.
Yeah, if there's any I mean, sorry, there should be any doubt that I mean, motorsport series as a whole, I mean, NASCAR's a great job, but all of motorsports, I think we understand how motorsports is a serious risk in and of itself. So, all these innovations constantly coming out, the data coming out. There are people every race weekend making sure these drivers are as safe as possible. And I'm sure there's like some behind the scenes stuff that of Ryan Blaney of conversations with NASCAR and the team AMR, et cetera, that he's on top of it. So again, to your point, and then Ryan Blaney would take care of himself. So
Well, and just quickly too, I know that this is something that if you're tuning into this live stream, you're probably very familiar with this. I don't mean to patronize anybody here, but in having this conversation, it's worth noting that athletes aside, when anything happens with these race cars on the weekends on the racetrack that is abnormal to what they should be doing, if they're in an incident, if they catch air, if something breaks, NASCAR takes that race car and they immediately send it over to the R&D center, the research and development center, and they figure out why that happened and how they make sure it can't happen again. And this is when drivers just have racing incidents and they step out of the car just fine. They still take the extra precaution to look into the race car. So imagine that with what they're doing with their athletes. It's really interesting. I think people should know more about what NASCAR does to ensure safety on a week to week basis, like you're saying, in a reactive / proactive way throughout the season.
I mean, something as simple as like the barriers, like the safer barrier, that is something inherently cool of itself. That there's like a dedicated section, excuse me, in the NASCAR Hall of Fame, that the what goes behind to creating something like that to minimize the impact on the driver and said the car is insane. The little details like that in motorsports is really really cool, and I agree. It'd be cool to do something a little bit about that.
I mean, and people, like, you have to recognize we have the Newman bar as recently as of when did Ryan Newman have his incident at Daytona? Like the developments, we talk about things like the Hans device and all of these developments in the race car that have been named after people or incidents. This isn't, back in the day we created this safety measure. No, this is as recently as a couple of years ago. We have implemented safety precautions inside the race car after what happened with Ryan Newman. I mean, I can't say it enough how proactive NASCAR is when it comes to trying to ensure safety. I'm big on it. I get frustrated, I think, when I hear people like to have those press conferences because we're blessed to work with a lot of athletes that see their health and the health of everybody around them in such a different light.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. And I know again, just to emphasize, we know Brian Blaney's team being taken care of. I know these are conversations happening on Reddit and certain discords. Like, we may not be seeing it, but 100% we're not going to let anything happen to Ryan, and neither his team. 100%. Penske doesn't would not do that to a driver. NASCAR would not allow that at all. To your point.
Moms for Ryan Blaney, do not sweat. He is doing great. Isn't that the joke? All the moms love Ryan Blaney. So
Ryan Blaney.
the NASCAR mom fandom. No
They're a
worries.
little
Somebody
worried
get on
that
Facebook. Let everybody know that it's going to be good.
And moms for Ryan Blaney, do not worry. Got to protect Pookie Blaney. Pookie is going to be okay. We promise. The number 12 Pookie.
Oh, I hate that.
Or you secretly love it. That's like a little different there. And
Blaney.
I mean, you're mentioning the Reddick spin and tumble, and then driving on off. That car is obviously in the R&D center as needed. Reddick is fine. Both him and the 19 were probably a little too aggressive, a little too early, and then all the wrecks in that Cup race. I mean, I'm sure everyone's NASCAR fantasy, your Final Four predictions, everyone's got turned upside down.
Okay, question though. You just said that. Everyone was a little aggressive here, and I'm kind of glad you said that. But also, that's kind of been the golden question out of that incident. Everyone's looking at it like, well, whose fault was this early and all that, and everyone's going back and forth and going, well, Reddick was pushing really hard. And step back. We are like 3 races to the championship 4. There is no room to not push it, right? I mean, how are you gonna? I heard Denny say on his podcast, this week in reference to that incident where Reddick maybe tried to squeeze himself through the high line a little too much there, and it got into chase, and it affected a couple of those playoff guys' days. And Denny said, yeah, Reddick was probably fighting a little too hard, a little too early in the race. You got to get to the checkered flag. But on the flip side of that, Denny also just talked all about how they don't know where the cautions are going to fall in these races, and that you've got to try to capitalize on opportunity when it comes. I mean, how do you not push for every opportunity in every position when you're this many races away from making the championship 4? Like, I didn't see anything wrong with that. So that's my question, Ash, is there such thing as pushing too hard at this point in the season?
I think we talked about that last week where I said certain drivers do have to take riskier moves, and it's fun that you bring this up because one, I think about the Hail Melon that was then therefore thus banned that Ross Chastain did to make sure that he got in, and we all loved it because it worked. And if it didn't work, like if the Tyler Reddick move worked and it didn't cascade into this domino effect, we'd be like, wow, what a great move! It worked. Like you have to do these things, and they're taking, again, calculated risk, and sometimes it doesn't work out, just like we just saw unfortunately here in motorsports world. It affects a lot of people when it doesn't work out. That's where I think people can't wrap their head around, because right, if Juan Soto wants to try to swing for a home run instead of a single run, then it's like, okay, it affects him, you get one out, you call it a day, you have another couple innings. If Tyler Reddick, it doesn't work out, you're suddenly taking out Chase Elliott and then Martin Truex Jr. and everyone else who was involved in that wreck. Thus and therefore. So you got to think about yourself, absolutely, and make those aggressive moves, and then you got to realize the fallout from that, hand in hand.
Yeah, you're absolutely right in that. I in full race analysis speculation mode on my end, I want to get into Tyler Reddick's brain right now, because this is a guy who won the regular season title. I mean, they've had a phenomenal year. And you're looking at the playoff standings and you're like, okay, so Joey Logano is locked in to the championship 4 on 6 top 5 finishes this season. And I'm just fighting to advance, and I'm the regular season champion. Like, it's got to be hard mentally to kind of grapple with that. And that's, of course, the beauty and pain of what everyone loves and hates about this playoff format. But there has to be, I would have to imagine, a mentality element that comes into seeing these decisions that Tyler's making and saying, like, I've got to push for this stuff because I know we have it, and I'm frustrated that we're not able to show that right now. And there are guys that are very much there and have not had the seasons that we've had.
There's like certain race fans that always say, oh, let them race. And this is amongst every series. And then when they do let them race, or they do race and stuff like this happens, they're like, oh, how could they let this happen? Like, what do we want? Like, these are race car drivers. To your point, they're making these moves. And Alessandra in the YouTube chat, Reddick has certainly not looked like his regular season form during this year's playoffs. Vegas, though, he looked great competitive-wise before his flip. Right, and he made that move, didn't work out. Unfortunately, cascaded all the way downwards. Let them race to us. I mean, obviously, there's a certain point. Don't start wrecking people at the finish. But they only have a couple chances left to make that Final Four.
Look, and I'm always going to be the person that I've said it a million times, and I will always say it, but like, I just can't, as a driver, how are you going to come back to your hauler at the end of a day and miss a mark, whether it's finishing second in a race or it's not making the cutoff or whatever it is? How are you going to come back to the hauler at the end of the day, or come into the team meeting on Monday or Tuesday morning and say, yeah, I could have pushed a little harder, but I played it safe? Like, I just don't know any team owner that's going to be angry at somebody for sitting down and saying, look, I gave it absolutely everything that I had. I pushed it so hard that I pushed it too hard. But like, I would rather that than say that I didn't. I mean, it is like, that's racing. It's such a fine line and a balance of knowing when to and when not to, because there's so many elements that are out of your control. But like, look, I'm never going to be angry at a driver for going out there and giving it everything they got, especially when we're 3 races from the end of the season.
Oh, Watson, the YouTube chat. It's crazy that Reddick and Elliott are in such a hole right now after being 2 of the best all season. Crazy to think they might both miss the championship for. Don't say that about Chase Elliott. He was my win.
Well, let me ask you this then, because I actually had this conversation with somebody this week who was still super high on Chase Elliott, even now making that championship for. And I asked him, I said, look, I get that Chase has been incredibly consistent this year. Like, that is what has got him here, is that kind of subtle, silent consistency. But it's game time. Like, it is past game time. Like, it is championship time, buddy. Like, consistency is not going to win you the championship. It's not going to get you to the championship 4. Like, when does Chase Elliott put the hammer down and push it a little bit? Will we see that happen from him? Or is Chase too much of a clean, consistent driver, and that will be his Achilles heel this year?
Gosh, I feel like he can make it to the Final 4, but then it's those moves in Phoenix that I don't think he's got it. I think we talked about this before, where I think Ryan Blaney is one of those who will make the moves that he has to do to then. He performs well under pressure. So my Final 4 was, for everyone's FYI, was Blaney, Elliott, Hamlin, and Larson. Clearly one of those won't make it now because Joey Logano is in it. Jess's was Larson, Willoughby, Bell, and Blaney.
No, I had Logano in there.
Wait.
I never doubted them for a second. Are you kidding me? I'm pretty sure I had Logano in there like weeks ago. Like, not a doubt in my mind.
I mean, then if you had to take someone out, then between Larson, Willoughby, Bell, and Blaney, who would it be?
No, look, I'm obviously kidding. Because if I'm being honest, Byron is my pick for this weekend. I had to run through the Bell, Blaney, Byron, the Bees. Byron's my pick for this weekend. So I don't know what I was thinking when I didn't have William Byron in the mix in there somewhere. So the person that picked my championship 4 a couple weeks ago, I'm unfamiliar with her work. But if you were asking me now, I do feel as though it would be quite different. So
yeah, I think I said this about Larson. He makes good moves. Blaney does. I'll see what Elliott and Hamlin can do. Hamlin does not need me to add an additional list and reasons he didn't make the Final 4 win the championship in 2024 amongst the list that we already have between all the years that he's been so close. Cannot handle it.
I mean, that's the tough thing for Hamlin too, and Hamlin and other guys too. Look at Larson this weekend. Like, we're at a point where there is zero room for error. I mean, we talked about it with Parker, how much of a team sport NASCAR is just to be successful. There are so many people that have to be perfect for you to be successful, much less the most successful and win a race. So at this point in the season, you can't have flubs on pit road. You can't you can't pit short of the box like we were seeing that happen a little bit this weekend with Denny. Like, there's just stuff like that can happen. And it's tough, but it's the little things like that are keeping people like Denny Hamlin out of the championship 4 right now.
Jess, I'm so glad you brought this up. Ladies and gentlemen, this is time for part of the stream where we all start yelling at me. Here, if you're familiar with the NFL and familiar with Munich Times,
I love this part.
We just brought up a good point, and I should have brought this up with Parker because I'd love to hear his opinion and kind of a discussion around this, right? The 11 consistently had bad pit stops. Kyle Larson had a bad pit stop, didn't tighten the wheels. There's a thing that, right, I like to say with an asterisk, let me say the sentence and we'll go on talking about it. Race wins are not a driver statistic. What does Ashley mean by that? It's not just up to the driver. And this is why I say an asterisk. Some motorsports, I can easily say this is not, race wins are not a driver stat. As Parker was like, oh, we're not talking about results. We're talking about performance overall. How many passes can you make and then keep them? How many times can you successfully avoid an incident? Like, there are other stats I think we can judge drivers on than, oh, they won in so-and-so. because a lot of times people are like, oh, Joey, famously, because Joey Logano won, now he's in the final four. People are upset. He's like, he wouldn't have won. And I was like, no, he could have won if Austin Dillon actually didn't try to schmurder him. There are many asterisks and a lot of wins of like, oh, this happened for this to happen. This yellow flag came out for this to happen. We can say that about a lot of things. But race wins are not a driver's stat. It's something I like to discuss. I'm not saying it's true. I'm not saying that's 100% right. I just think there's more to it than a driver just winning a race, because you can lose races in the pits if your pit crew is something happens, God forbid, if you come in too hot, if you're speeding in the pit road. There are so many variables in motorsports that just saying a race win that like, oh, like we're gonna say Byron won. When did he win? I have it here. Byron won in 2021 in Miami, therefore he is going to win again. Well, maybe not. Maybe he will. He has good performances on high speed and high wear tracks. Huge for Miami. I think that kind of performance discussion is good for something like Miami for Byron. If you're just talking about, oh, so and so, his pit crew needs to be on top of it, his strategy needs to be on top of it. He then needs to manage his tires well in 2024 and not think about what happened in 2021. So, that is a fun sentence I like to throw around to get motorsports fans agitated.
Well, to your point there, Ash, I mean, I agree with you, and I'm in furthering your argument. You can take everything you just said and almost look at it on the flip side as well and say, how many times have we seen a driver lose position on the racetrack and then pit stops happen and that pit crew gets him out first, or they get him out back in position where they needed to be. So to your point, and then if that driver goes on to win that race, well, the pit crew got him back in position. So that's not a driver statistic. That's a team statistic. And it's funny, actually, somebody asked me this week about Joey Logano, and they said, is Joey Logano, I can't remember the wording, but essentially it said something about him being one of the smartest drivers in the field, because they used the examples of him being able to go out there and kind of some of the unknown events that we've had or the newness. He's able to go out there and capitalize on it and kind of learn quickly. But that phrase completely undervalues what Paul Wolf brings to the table. And the two of them working together, I mean, this win this past weekend at Las Vegas was a gamble on fuel mileage. That is a call from the top of the box. Now, of course, race long discussion. It's a team game here. However, to your point, Ash, it is very, very, very rare that you would ever look at a statistic and say that is a driver statistic. The team, especially, like I've said 1,500 times this stream already, there's no room for error at this point in the season. So every single person on that team has to be perfect. And right now, Joey Logano and Paul Wolf are showing that their teamwork is working out in their favor, while other teams are lacking in that department, and it's going to keep them out of the championship four.
That's what I do appreciate, that they do celebrate all of the team on the podium. You'll get the crew chief up there, you get the pit crew up there, like everyone's celebrating on the podium. Of course, the driver is usually highlighted a lot and discussed a lot, but we'll talk. I think NASCAR does a great job of showing it, because then, not to talk about the open wheel competition of Formula One, but I like to throw that sentence around there that race wins are not a driver's stat. They're like, how dare you? And I was like, well, you thought the strategy? Like, what do you think happened there? Tire strategy? Like, why do you think we have all these strategies on pit wall? Like, what do you think we're doing here? And then when they lose or something, God forbid, something happens on the track, then suddenly it's like Ferrari's strategy fault. Be like, no, it was everyone's fault. That's why when you get penalized in F1, the whole team gets penalized. Like everyone gets in trouble because it's a team sport. So we see the drivers a lot. And I think NASCAR's, oh, you know what I also love? When we're highlighting the pit crew, gosh, when we were doing it at the beginning of this year, they're just talking about pit crews, about like their previous experience and their names and like what their hobbies or some fun facts about it. That I love. That I really enjoyed, because it is really important. And there was a great article in the New York Times about these pit crews. A lot of them former either Division I or Division II athletes just coming in, because you need people who are fast, quick, reactive, can be good under pressure. So I always like throwing around race wins are not a driver's stat. Whether you believe that or not is not relevant to the discussion. Discussing that sentence in and of itself is really fun, because you're like, oh yeah, there's a lot more. Exactly to your point, the pit crew can get the driver out all of a sudden ahead of where they need to be. And that's I really just want to highlight that it's a team sport.
Real quick too, Ash, you made a good point on the coverage there. And if anybody listening to this is sometimes the best interviews after the race are coming from the crew chief. Like the driver, there's so much emotion and everything, and that crew chief has been the one that's like, he's the most analytical. He's really able to give you so much of a different insight in some of these interviews. So it's worth noting that if the broadcast isn't able to cover that, NASCAR.com, Alex Weaver, she's always out there. She does a great job chasing down these interviews. They make a point to talk to the winning crew chief, and they make a point to talk to a member of the winning pit crew as well. So you can always get that information on NASCAR.com, NASCAR Digital, in the week to follow. So if you do find yourself wanting more of that insight and hearing from some more of those players other than just the guy behind the wheel, Alex Weaver and NASCAR.com, they've got you covered there.
Oh my God, I love Alex Weaver. We should have her on the show too. Just get everyone on, but she'd be a great asset. I'd love to hear. I mean, her stories from on the track and
Another Clemson Tiger.
That's fine. I have nothing against the Clemson Tigers. I think.
Go
I guess
Tigers,
I should.
baby.
Go blue. It's fine.
You're like, not yet.
Just yeah, we'll see how it goes this weekend. How did you guys do this weekend? Did you win?
Clemson, we won. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yep. Our only loss this year is to them Georgia Bulldogs. And it was the first game of the year. So at this point, everyone's like, Alabama's got 2 losses. No one's focusing on Clemson's loss to Georgia, right?
No one's
the playoff committee says otherwise, but that's okay.
And I think the thing everyone would like to talk about or complain about, if you have not yet in the chat, is Joey Logano to the Final 4 race in Phoenix, locked in for that championship, for making the round of 8 because of another driver's disqualification, and then winning the next race on a strategy call to advance is the most Joey Logano thing ever, in my opinion. There's not a more Joey Logano
in an even year.
Yeah, exactly. That I've ever heard. Yeah, but not a true.
But here's the thing: to your point of what we talked about earlier, though, in this team's ability to capitalize. I mean, I know I sit here and joke, and I'm like, I never doubted them for a second. Okay, but at this point, Joey Logano, Paul Wolfe, they're in the championship 4. They've got 2 extra weeks to be able to focus and prepare for that. They've defied the odds already twice this season to get themselves there. Like, it's hard to argue with them as being super competitive at Phoenix. I mean, it's going to be, like I said, it's going to be amazing if he gets himself there with the season-long statistics that he has. But at the end of the day, like, I'm actually not going to doubt them anymore. Truly. Like, those extra 2 weeks, you can't underestimate how big that can be for a team to just push that mindset forward to that championship race.
Mm-hmm.
Is Joey Logano going to be our champion again this year? I mean, goodness.
Would you like it's a Joey Logano sandwich. It's Joey Logano, Ryan Blaney, Joey Logano. Oh, I guess it's a Ryan Blaney sandwich. But yeah, I remember when he won, I was eating a pretzel in the media center at Phoenix. So I will forever ingrain that memory in my head. But I will not
never forget where I was when I was eating that pretzel.
Yeah, Joey Logano might want to invite me. Maybe it was me that helped him win eating that pretzel. I'm just saying. Good for it. Yeah, you have a very
lucky pretzels.
Lucky pretzels. Maybe we'll eat it on our final before the championship 4, just for good luck here. Marcus had a really good point, or want to talk about Homestead. Excuse me, about meeting. Marcus in the chat, I believe, is a huge Christopher Bell fan, which is why you root for him time and time again. He did predict that Christopher Bell would win this previous week. However, it did come in second place. Was dang near close. Ryan Blaney did a great job as a teammate to Joey Logano there. But can Bell clinch Homestead, or do you have another favorite winner for Homestead?
Look, I wouldn't put it past Bell to be able to go out there and clinch at Homestead, especially because I got to pull this up. But I believe, well, while I pull this up, I'll tell you, I mentioned earlier, my pick for Homestead is William Byron. I mean, like you mentioned, he won there in 2021. He finished, top 4 there, top 5 there last year. So I think that they have a lot of potential to be competitive this weekend, and they've been consistent. But back to your question about Bell, I mean, he won this race last year, and in a little bit of opposite, fashion to this weekend, like Kyle Larson went out there and led the majority of this race last year, and then Bell came in and led the final 16 laps and called it a win. So, a little bit of like the disappointment we saw from him this past weekend of feeling like he was the dominant car and then didn't get that win. He knows that can happen the other way around as well, and he knows that they have potential at Homestead. So I think a combination of all of those things, plus just a pissed off Christopher Bell, because as we've all established at this point, whether it's played out or not, Christopher Bell clearly fuels himself with the "you guys want to doubt me" card. Like he loves the doubters. He loves feeling like that people aren't believing in him, and that's what fuels him. Like this guy's been in the championship for the past like 3 years, and he's still like, "Don't count me out." We're like, "No, no one is, Christopher. Like, you're all in our picks. Like, you're good, buddy." But like, clearly that is what fuels him. So, knowing all that, you have to wonder too if coming off such a heartbreak this past weekend is gonna add fuel to that fire. I wouldn't put it past him. But my pick is still William Byron.
Makes me think of course, the famous Star Wars card, just let the hate flow through you. So you're saying Christopher Bell is going to turn into a Sith Lord, clinch the championship, become Christopher Bell that we all know and love, and just let it fuel him here. I have, let's see, chat says Bell can either win at Homestead or Martinsville. He has fast feet and can certainly win his way into the Final Four. Interesting. Chat thinks Bell. Yeah, I think Bell might be fueled from Vegas momentum. You mentioned the looming pressure to get into the Final Four. Seeing if he can perform well there. Interesting enough, our producer Rachel texted me and she goes, "Reddick is king at Homestead." But I'm looking at the driver averages in Homestead. Reddick, I mean, doesn't do terribly, right? He's got 2 top 5s, 2 top 10s. Average finish here is 13.3. But I was going to go more with either Hamlin, who's a 3-time Miami winner, tied for most of all time, as a potential pick. And I think Hamlin I think he wants it. I think he's over all the BS that's happening to him time and time again, whether it's pit road or other incidents taking him out. He's just like, no, I'm winning. We're done here. Like, end of discussion. So I'm going Bell. I mean, sorry, Hamlin.
It's interesting. Yeah, no, I mean that's an interesting pick. Also, to Rachel's credit here on the Reddick thing, it's funny. I whenever I think Homestead too, and I visually see those seafoam green walls, the first thing I think of is Tyler Reddick ripping the fence at Homestead. So I'm the same way. Like I equate success at Homestead with Tyler Reddick, and I think that's because we saw him have so much success there, especially back in the Xfinity series. I mean, he won 2 championships there, back-to-back championships there, and was phenomenal there. So yes, to Rachel's credit, you can't count out Tyler Reddick. He knows this racetrack, and he's had a lot of success there, and he is willing to go out there, as we already saw, and be, say it with me, aggressive. And that's what you have to do at this point in the season. So I'm with you, Rachel. I'm backing you up there. But look, your pick isn't bad. I'm with you. I think Christopher Bell, and I think to your point too. Oh, I'm sorry, you picked Hamlin.
Sorry, yeah.
I will question that pick because the difference is Bell is going out there with so much fuel, knowing that they have what it takes. I'm starting to wonder if this 11 team is questioning their championship potential. And that could just be me, but it feels like they're starting to make enough mistakes that they have to wonder if Bell's like, I've got what it takes. I just have to get there. Hamlin's like, we have to get there. And do we have what it takes? That's just the perception that I have right now. Do you feel the same way?
No, interesting that you said that. I don't feel that Denny Hamlin, knowing how competitive Hamlin is, don't forget, right, the Michael Jordan aspect. They will do what it takes. I think they're going to be like, all right, guys, I'm sure this week they had an all hands meeting and we got to get our stuff together because I can't curse on this channel. It's just shucks. We got to get our stuff together.
Oh, we can't curse on this channel.
Like we need to lock in. I think they might have had a few fumbles. I think they're like, all right, we're learning from this. I mean, we'll see if I'm right or wrong. Hopefully they do learn from it. I think Homestead will show if they have and go from there. I think they can do it. I think Hamlin is competitive enough. I think he's just like wants to get the noise out of his head. Reddick is interesting to me because when Reddick gets anything but P1, he turns sad. He turns into a little emo boy, which is fine. I appreciate a driver who wears emotion on his sleeve. I'm just wondering if he's going to let that get to him.
That's a great question. That's a great point because it's like we talked about with Christopher Bell. It's like it's so much of this is a head game, and it's all about how you turn that. Do you turn it into fuel? Do you turn it into pressure? How do you work those emotions and those kind of mental challenges that are thrown your way throughout the season? Um, Shoot, you made a really good point, and I wanted to back you up on it, and I wanted to give you credit, and now I forgot it. So no credit for Ash, but
The 11 does not have any race
dang.
winning speed whatsoever. They have 2 weeks to find it, says Alejandro Sebastian. Interesting. Well, find it they shall. They've just been hustling us like Paul Newman and Tom Cruise in that movie. Suddenly, they're like the fastest car out there. We're like, wait a second, how'd that happen? I'm kidding. I can only dream that that'd be a fun storyline. My final four, Alexander says, is 22, 24, the 20, and the 5. Kyle Larson's interesting. He is a 6-time stage winner, and he also won in 2022. Of course, race wins we talked about it later as an asterisk, but he knows what to do essentially and the team knows what to do to get those stages, to get those points, to get those wins.
I remembered the point I was going to make earlier, and I could not agree with you more, Ash. And I think it's worth noting, and then also checking back in next week. I can't imagine anybody else in the field is getting a better pep talk than Denny Hamlin from Michael Jordan. Now I know the team equate here. We're talking Joe Gibbs. We're talking different teams here. But as a friend, right? Like if you're going through something, you want to call up a friend and be like, "Yo, I need some words of advice. Can I get you?" Michael Jordan? You get to pick up the phone and call Michael Jordan for your little pre-race boost of energy? I don't know anybody else in the field that's getting a better pep talk than that. So if Denny goes out there and just slings it this weekend, then we know what the secret sauce is. It's those MJ pep talks.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of bringing back my New York Yankees. John Garl said, and they're like, oh, feel like blah blah. And he's like, I'm not celebrating till I have a World Series trophy. He's like, this is not the trophy I'm after. I'm looking for the next one. Very locked in. Quote unquote. Some folks saying that it's reminiscent of Kobe Bryant when he said something similar about the NBA championship. I think someone who has spoken similar to that effect is funny enough. I think Bell has given that kind of interview where he's like, wants that Final Four spot and he wants that championship win. So far, everyone's just been kind of like, next race. Bell is like, I need to go through the motions to secure a lock-in position, but I want that. I want that championship trophy at the end of the year.
It's interesting that you said that actually. Again, an actions detrimental this week. Sorry, no free ads. Denny Hamlin's podcast. He mentioned that he doesn't feel like momentum is something that is in this sport. He's like, we get questions all the time from the media about how is this momentum going to propel you forward, and you guys clearly have momentum. And Denny's like, clearly, do we? I don't know. He's like, I look at this as a week to week thing. Every playing ground is different. Every racetrack is different. Every car is different. And I thought it was a really interesting perspective because I have to believe there are other drivers that think very differently about that. And again, it goes back to how everybody handles mentality and pressure and looks at challenges differently. But interesting take, right? That momentum is just not even a factor in NASCAR. That every week is so different. You have to take it on like an entirely new thing.
That is interesting. You would figure that if you I don't know, if 1 week you're just locked in and you're like, I had a good drive, we had a good strategy, we're feeling good. You take that feeling and you just build upon it to the next week. And I understand a little bit of what he's saying, but I'm surprised that he said it doesn't affect him because I think it affects Tyler Reddick. I mean,
Bingo.
I think it affects Tyler Reddick. I think this is going to affect Bell, that he was so close, but he could have done it, could have closed that door, could have clinched that win. He's been in the Final Four before. He knows what that feels like, and he wants that feeling again, and he wants that opportunity to win that championship. So I think it's going to affect Bell positively. We just need to see. I need to see something out of Chase Elliott. Chase Elliott, you were my prediction to win the championship. You're never going to see this because you're never online. But God forbid this somehow gets back to you through the antenna or your flare gun or something. You were my prediction to win the championship. I just need you to lock in here, buddy. I just need that Mamba mentality from you, which I don't know if he has.
I'm just sitting. I would love to see that from him as well. We have not seen that from him ever. from my knowledge. He's just so, and I don't mean that in a bad way. Like we're again, the entire discussion about how everybody handles things differently. Like he's not a head case. He is pretty calm, cool, and collected most of the time. Pretty even keeled, pretty consistent, pretty clean, pretty respectful, pretty there. Like, are we gonna see him kick it up a notch? We're gonna need to.
Ugh. Q says I could give Reddick a gnarly pep talk. I mean,
I'm being
funny.
really hard on Chase Elliott.
Well, someone's got to be. I don't know if anyone else is, and it's gonna. He's not gonna know. Who's gonna tell him?
Thank you.
Anyone here know Chase Elliott personally?
Thank you.
How is he? What is he? Who's gonna know? What is he gonna do? Not talk to us? He doesn't already talk to me. It's fine. They're interesting enough. There is I think it's Tony. His name is Tony Robbins, and he mentions this was like years ago. I don't know what he's up to now. I haven't followed him since, but he was giving a talk or something. He's I think psychologist of some kind. But there are sports psychologists that get called, and he's been called in, and they're like, "You talk to players," because he's like, "I've talked to Tiger Woods." He's like, "I've talked to LeBron James." Like, there's something in there mentally that you need to like. They need to like get. You need to have these conversations with them. Like, sure, you could practice as much as you can, but if you get the yips on track, on the court, etc., and you're not performing, it is what it is, and it does affect you mentally. So at what point, like, are we talking about like, gosh, a Ted Lasso episode where he also brings in a sports psychologist to talk to everyone and also for himself? Like, are people calling in the big guns to win this championship? Because at one point, like, how are you taking this and how are you preparing?
Apparently, it's going to Cabo because that's what a handful of guys did. Was it Cabo before the start of the round of 8? Which, again, to each their own. It is a long season. Everybody needs to take care of themselves in different ways. But how funny is that? Can you imagine any other sport than being like, "Oh, cool. Semifinals of the college football playoffs. Y'all want to hit the Bahamas and then." And then go to the game. Like,
Travis Kelce is hanging out with Taylor Swift on bye weeks and stuff. And everyone's doing stuff like it's fine. Rachel, our producer, says it's for someone.
okay.
Well, yeah. It was. We're just when you. I mean, the NASCAR schedule next. I mean, because it was only the Olympics this year. There's only going to be one weekend off as soon as we get started here. So yeah, if you gotta take some room for yourself and your family and such. People were so mad online.
No, look, I'm just being critical. I'm just being that grumpy old guy on Reddit or grumpy old gal or whoever I am. But like, I'm with you. Everybody needs to take care of themselves, take care of their families. Like, there's these people. This is their career. This is their means to make money. This is not who they are. This is not all encompassing. They have families. They have lives. They have so much else going on that I will never, ever find anger or have an issue with these guys taking that time for themselves. None of the guys in Cabo performed very well this weekend at Las Vegas. I don't know if those things equate at all. No, again, I'm just being the silly grumpy person, but it is kind of funny though to look at that because it's go time, it's crunch time, so relax on the beach, I guess. I don't know, it's interesting.
I like how Jess is being so tough. Interesting. Yeah, that I think it's for me it's like I get it. You back to back, you barely have any time of anything to yourself. Okay, not everyone who went some of them got schmurdered on the track because of racing incidents that were not their fault. So I wouldn't say a correlation is not causation in the terms of the Cabo thing, as Twitter would like you to believe. There is a book that I read about the 1990s.
No. Everybody on Reddit has generalized statements. It's fine. It's fine. It's how that works.
There was a book called Blood in the Garden about the 1990s Knicks, and something that I definitely remember is I'm just paraphrasing really quickly here, that regardless if we're winning or losing, you regret someone challenging you here at Madison Square Garden. Like, you're going to make them work for this win. Like, you're going to make them. Have we seen any kind of like that kind of mentality? Because we talk about all the coaches. What Nick Saban was in the Formula One, so people were talking about him and his coaching and who that was, and then informing people from the F1 world who he is and why he's regarded as one of the best college football coaches of all time. Bill Belichick and things like that. That kind of mentality. Kobe Bryant. I was speaking about Blood in the Garden, things like that. Do we have that kind of conversations in NASCAR where we're like, we're locking the F in? Excuse my language. We are doing this. I am going to be the best. We are working on it. Or Denny Hamlin's like, we're going week by week.
Yeah, look, I joked earlier about Denny Hamlin having the luxury of calling up Michael Jordan for a pep talk. But at the end of the day, if you gave me the numbers of every single person in that garage and asked me who I would call, I'm calling up Coach Gibbs. No questions asked. He's a spiritual man, he's a kind man in the public eye. He is very warm and he's very professional. But at the end of the day, like, you look at this guy's resume. I was listening to a podcast that wasn't even a racing podcast this week, and they went on a whole spiel about what Coach Gibbs brought to the Washington Redskins, now Commanders organization as a whole. And they talked about his ability as a coach to win multiple Super Bowls with different quarterbacks, with different running backs. Like, this is a guy who, he is a coach. He knows how to develop talent. He knows how to develop camaraderie, the team element, the entire, just what we talked about. That is like the skill set aside, all of the other elements that go into having a well-rounded, successful team. Joe Gibbs knows how to do that. And I know that he's not the one out here, as all the team owners being the most public, talking about all of his advances, but he has a standard for himself. He has a standard for his team. He has a standard for his own legacy as well. And I know those conversations behind closed doors are everything that you're saying. He's telling them, we have something to uphold. We have something to prove. And I expect you guys to go out there and do that.
I just want to know these conversations. I just love sports so much and like how they get there. I want to just hear how they lock in. So I'll definitely be listening to all the media scrums and all the stuff that comes out of media days and post race and post practice and etc. So I'm very, very excited to see what happens in Miami. I like Miami. I'm excited to go. This is my first time. I'm going to Homestead races this weekend. I'll be there for Xfinity and
You'll be there.
Yeah. So I'm excited to check it out in person, and I'll let you guys know from the ground what it was like and such. And then Martinsville is Martinsville. That's a entirely different beast of its own, because we can talk about strategy and mentality to the cows come home, but there's so many things out of your control in motorsports, which makes it inherently more difficult to be like, I can do everything I can do perfectly. Chase Elliott can have the best lap, then all of a sudden some back marker or someone can just eat into him before he grabs the white flag. Like, what are you gonna do?
That's racing.
That is racing. What is it? In order of points, Final Four would be the 22, the 5, the 12, and the 20 in that order after the Phoenix race is over, says Jamie in the YouTube. Racist Kyle Busch is winning Homestead. I'm Delulu. Hey, we all need a friend like that. I respect it.
Look, I agree. You might be a little bit Delulu, and I say that with all the love in my heart. However, if we're talking about fun winners at Martinsville, or fun winners, I should say, for the rest of the season that aren't playoff guys, I'm still somewhere inside me holding out for a Martin Truex Jr. Martinsville win. I mean, how amazing would it be to see Martin Truex Jr. go out there one last time at a track we know we can win at? It doesn't affect the playoffs. We're not having any awkward double burnouts at Phoenix where we're trying to celebrate everybody. Let him go out there. Imagine if he can get that last full-time career win at Martinsville and then pack it up and go fishing. I would love that for him.
Pack it up and go fishing. Yeah, I wonder what the off season will quote. I say off season. I mean that in heavy quotation. Every time I say the word off season, I mean that in very heavy quotes, knowing there is no off season in motorsports. You probably just get like the Christmas and New Year's around that time, and then immediately, I mean, NASCAR starts back up so quickly. So understood. I'm not trying to be like, oh yeah, after Phoenix, everyone gets like 2 months off. Absolutely not. That is not how it works. Everyone's back in the office, gearing up for next year, if not in 2 years. So, and from there, well, Chad, what was your prediction for Homestead?
Byron, Willie B, baby.
Willie B. I'm writing that down so I don't forget. Okay, I'm putting Hamlin. Cool. Chat. Jess, thank you so much for being here.
No, don't write it down so that I can change my mind next week and say that I never doubted them, like I did with Joey Logano.
Done. I will not write it down. You'd be like, "Oh, yeah, I said that guy all the time." Chat will definitely not pull up this VOD and remind you of what you said. Absolutely not. Chat would never do that. Would never say that you were wrong. Chat, thank you so much for hanging out with us. Jess, thank you so much for being here and being part of the show, week in and week out. We'll be back next Wednesday
Thank
to talk
you.
all things Homestead, NASCAR. Thank you so much for having us. Chat, enjoy the rest of your Wednesday. Remember, be kind, don't be a jerk, it's not that hard, and support local, which includes your local racetracks. Cheers, everyone.
Hey, I'm Parker Kligerman, and you're watching the NASCAR Twitch channel. For more content like this, be sure to subscribe to NASCAR on Twitch.
I'm Ryan Flores. Join Kim Kuhn and myself each and every week at Around the Track. We'll get you ready for the upcoming race weekends from short tracks to the Cup Series, whether you'll be attending in person or watching from home.
Coming your way each week is the best bets to win some easy money and driver suggestions to help pump up your fantasy lineups. Around the Track also tells you what to watch for in the NASCAR Regional Series and which young phenom drivers to keep your eye on.
Plus, our At Traction segment gives you all of the fan activities, concerts, and tailgating fun at the track. Be sure to check out Around the Track each and every Wednesday on NASCAR's YouTube channel.
Join Todd Gordon and myself each week for NASCAR Inside the Race. We'll break down exactly how the race was won.
Plus, we'll dive into the data and go in depth on race strategies, penalties, and rule changes.
Catch NASCAR Inside the Race presented by Consumer Cellular each Tuesday on NASCAR's YouTube channel.
Hey guys, I'm Corey LaJoy, driver of the number 7 car. Join my buddy Ryan Flores. Every week we stack some pennies. Talk about NASCAR Cup Series right out of my windshield.
Plus, we'll give out the dogs of the week for the best pit crews and pit crew guys from the weekend. We'll break down all the money stops, all the woes, get into some technical issues, and we'll also answer all of your hashtag Penny for Your Thoughts questions.
And we have a ton of guests. Sometimes SVG pops by. We got Raja. We have all sorts of guys. You never know who's going to pop in the Nonsense Garage, but make sure you tune in. SiriusXM on Tuesdays, YouTube on Wednesdays, wherever you find your podcast on Wednesdays as well. Come stack pennies with us.